allow people to develop skills in areas that they've just not been able to be exposed to previously. And that's been really nice. It's quite motivating for people. If someone wants to learn a skill, they can, when a suitable piece of work comes up, they can nominate themselves and say, who's going to work here. There's nothing in the way of people, there's no structure in the way of people being able to do that. And that's a really nice thing, and it's good organisationally as well, because it means that we've now got more people available to work on what we need to get done. And as Amir mentioned on the last slide, we were worried about maintainability, we were worried about code quality moving to this model. As it turns out, people are much more discerning the first time they come across something. So having fresh eyes across code all the time is a good thing, and people spot problems, they fix the ones there and then. And that's been quite illuminating and really good. Also, the teams become more collaborative. People talk to each other more. People don't just talk within their own component teams. If someone's got a problem and they know that someone else might be able to help, they go and talk to each other. People are able to help each other out, and that means that we can just deliver much more effectively. And most importantly, from a business perspective, is that we're really much more optimized for delivering value. We're always, as much as possible, we're working on the highest priority, the work that's going to bring in the most value for the company.
There were a few things that we think were quite key in getting us there and making this transition kind of a successful transition. And probably the most important one was that it was mainly self-organized, kind of from the ground up, as it were. It basically started with a certain hunger in the team to improve how we were working. And that was a really good basis because it meant that people were open to some level of experimentation. And whilst management basically kicked off the transition across everybody, the big customer rollout, everybody was a part of building how that process should work. And that was really important because especially in the early days, we definitely did have a lot of people who were maybe a bit skeptical or in two minds about whether this way was going to be the right way to go. But by everybody kind of being given a chance to be part in building how exactly it should actually work or how all the details were going to look, it meant that we ended up with something that we have really broad buy-in for. And I would say that probably none of us would be looking back at even going back to the old way or the way we were before. Whilst we were doing this, having regular reviews and improving what we were doing in an iterative fashion was really important to us. And that's probably mainly because you just have no way of knowing all the issues that you're going to encounter unless you just get going to an extent and sort of tackle the problems that arise as you encounter them. It was also really great for us that we, especially in the early days, we were giving time for knowledge sharing that we needed. As Hanif has mentioned, our throughput probably dropped a little bit for a period, but arguably that has paid off in the long run because we're now in a position, only a few months later from starting the transition, where pretty much any combination of us can pick up any kind of card and just get going with it, and that's a really productive position to be in. And finally, a key element of making this whole thing work was probably also that we were quite strict with trying and forcing things as much as possible through this single backlog. Apart from support, which we've already covered, still kind of separate and might merge into it at a later stage. There were a lot of times when, especially early on, the process was maybe some wobbly, when other types of work kept coming up and people were making a case for maintenance work separately or having this kind of work separately. But I think by being strict and trying to come up with a process that would work for all these kind of types of issues and work for different types of stakeholders as well, we came up with a solid process.
So there are also some things that we'd like to try to help us improve even further in the future. And one of those items is communities to try out what we call communities of practice. An advantage of having component teams is that you've got a place where people can learn the skills that are required in a particular area. With feature teams, people are working in different areas, and if no work needs to be done, say, on a particular piece of architecture, you run the risk of people not developing that skill, and maybe that skill won't be in the organisation when we need it. So communities of practice, this is an idea where we can form groups of people within our organisation. They can meet up at the time of their choosing to work together on learning skills in a particular area. So you might have a community of practice about an architectural component or a particular technique. But it allows us to keep that knowledge in the organisation, even if we're not necessarily doing work in that area for a period of time. Something else we realised is that developers are now working on features end-to-end and they're seeing things all the way through, which means that if we're able to give ourselves a better knowledge of the commercial context around what it is we're doing, we can offer better solutions. And it's much easier for us to see the impact of that when we're working end-to-end. So it would be nice to work with our commercial team more to understand what's happening around the work that we're doing and what's driving us to do what we do. Finally, expanding the team to become fully cross-functional. This change that we made is really amongst the development organisation. What we'd like to do is bring in our DBAs, our operations and systems people, because sometimes we still get work because we need their help. It'd be nice. The reason we didn't do it was because around did not necessarily have enough people, or we were free, maybe they were too busy with other things. But it would be nice to work with them more, bring them involved more often. So that's it for the talk. If anyone's got any questions?
Just around the Kanban board, so you've got one Kanban board that all the teams work off, and it's at story level? So
it is now.
Yeah. And is that electronic or physical?
That's physical. We do track things in Jira as well, but that's usually it's the product managers who like to use Jira, or so the developers. But it's useful for tracking cycle times and stuff, but generally it's the physical board that we interact with.
And how big is it? Because I worked for a company with about 10 teams. If we had one like that, it'd have to be massive.
Right.
Oh, right.
So we don't list the entire backlog on that board because it would just go off and lose it. So yeah, we cut off the backlog at a certain point, and it's just Jira for things that aren't going to be worked in the future.
Okay. And when you do your stand up, you don't go through each person.
No.
You walk through the Kanban board.
Pretty much. So the moment the running orders, quickly discuss support, then we discuss any of the cards that are in progress at the moment, and then there's a bit forward on things as well as directions and stuff like that. So we don't actually discuss anything that isn't in play yet.
Maybe I missed it, but can you give me an idea about the size of the teams before and after?
Yeah, well, I guess it's a bit complicated because we've had a number of other team changes going on as well. But when we started out, it was probably on 20 people.
25.
In each team?
No, sorry, that was like overall. And then each sub-team was around 4-ish people, some teams were a bit smaller.
So on the components, each team was about 4 or 6. And on the feature teams?
Again, it would be about maybe 3 to 5.
So you had basically one representative from each sort of component.
Originally that's how we started out, but I guess because we invested quite a lot in this knowledge transfer early on, and now it feels like quite often people from totally different components originally and we work now on components that we weren't initially involved with without having a specialist who
You've gone from the state of working on components to working on features. By going through that, you've lost a larger team that now sort of knows everything, which is great. How are you going to avoid those new teams becoming specialists on certain features and then to return back to the same problem because of a different form?
So those new teams are not at the moment as permanent as the old teams were. You keep them around for the lifetime of your own latest strand of work, and then people are able to break apart and start to form new teams around different features.
Another thing that we've noticed recently as well is that maybe not everybody is interested in becoming a generalist. There are some people who are interested in developing specialisms, and I guess in that case it's the structure we have at the moment can be a structure that provides that if people want to, if they choose to sort of work on something.
Does that mean a person could potentially work in two teams at the same time? Or not?
Not two teams at the same time, but I guess you could pick the team that you work on based on whether this work is going to involve something that you want to do specialize in.
You have a support track you mentioned. How do you, for lack of a better way of putting it, prevent abuse of the support track? This is a classic problem I have.
Yeah.
There's always some person who's like, oh yeah, it's totally a bug. Can you do it right now?
And that's something that we did come across.
Yeah.
I think as long as, the key thing about support is it's reactivity vacuum. Are the items of work coming through it small enough that we're able to react as needed? So not necessarily too strict about what the definition of a support item is. If we can get it done quickly, and you as a stakeholder think it's urgent, we'll do it. But we also, if something's becoming bigger, we'll say, okay, we're going to stop this and we're going to need to prioritize this on our main backlog of work.
So the other problem with the support track is that it's in, we had a lot of trouble justifying it on its own. So where we rotated people in much the same way you talked about it in this work, but the problem is that somebody somewhere hates the idea that the developer isn't doing anything and doesn't get the idea that availability is what the developer is when they're not developing. And so is there just always that much work sitting in the support track? Or how do you handle them cavitating onto and off of the teams during that week? Isn't that damaging or disruptive to them?
It really depends. It seems to fluctuate quite a lot. We sometimes go through weeks where, especially if you have people working on support who are relatively strict, and we try, like our guiding rule is if it's something that you can sort of take in 4 hours, obviously we're usually a bit over that anyway, but like, so it just, that's a guiding thing. If we have people who are strict with that, and we will turn things around quickly, and anything that's bigger, we'll just make sure it has to be transferred to a big backlog. Then we manage to often clear out our support backlog immediately, but sometimes it builds up.
And I think for us, we're lucky that people do see the value in that, the stuff that's going through that support work. They see it's necessary. So they, it's not really come out that people have questioned the need for it. If anything, it's the opposite for them. We don't. People are trying to use it too much.
Because originally it sounded like the support person would then go back onto the team if the support work wasn't there. And that was the thing that would make me kind of go, having someone who just shows up at the team, hi, I can give you 10 minutes here, or I got an hour for you right now, is just not fun for anybody.
And I think for the most part we had enough support work that didn't happen very often.
That's why we changed it basically, because we found this issue.
How often would you return people from the support teams?
So this
Is that for the feature teams?
The support teams,
Oh,
how often would they rotate around?
So we started out with, again, trying to rotate on a weekly basis, and initially we tried to rotate everybody once a week, on Monday basically, but that was kind of random and not really useful, because then obviously you had to figure out handover and stuff. So we started staggering it for people to sort of rotate at different kind of days, and now there's not actually any strict rules. I think that people sort of have in the back of their minds that if they've been on for a week, they should probably look to maybe hop back onto like a feature, but there's no strict rules at the moment that are kind of recognized.
Yeah, we like to see. I think we've started with a rule of thumb that if you start an item of work, at least continue until it's finished, and then you might need to continue to rotate.
So how do you form feature teams right now? Monday or something. Is a meeting where you're sitting together and you're going through the stories and then we can vote, or are you pointing to
We do it at standard. Yeah, so we do it at stand-up. We make sure that we've got the skills that we need in that particular feature. So that's the first thing is we make sure that we've got someone who knows the area.
you ask?
And then it's, yeah, exactly. And then it's basically free. Everyone's there and people just say that. Initially, it was a lot of confusion, because it's like and that's when we were doing it too much. And what we found is as we do this rotation, as we keep the teams around a bit longer, the rotation happens less often. So people become free more naturally, and it's just a bit more natural to for them to say, okay, now I'm free, now I should start this rewriting of the work because I've become free and I'm more creative. So that's just happens to be natural. So yeah, we'll stick around for